Okay, as promised, here is your Chapter 5 review. I know the material is getting a little bit tougher, and I thought about doing a Zoom or something like that for a review, but then I know people's schedules are kind of all over the place, so I thought if I just took the actual review, which is parallel to the test itself, and worked out the questions, that hopefully that would provide enough insight to hope everybody gets a better chance of being successful. That was said horribly. All right, so identify a common factor. With 5w plus 10, I can take out a 5, and I'm left with w plus 2. With 4w plus 8, my greatest common factor is a 4, and I am left with w plus 2. And so the common factor, hopefully you can see that connection there, is w plus 2. All right. Number 2. Factor, remember to use the largest common factor and to check by multiplying. Factor out a negative factor if the first coefficient is negative. So that is the case here. So between 5 and 25, I can factor out a 5, but I'm going to make it negative. And then between y squared and y, I can pull the y out front. And so I am left with 1y, and then this sign right here will change to a positive because I'm pulling that negative out front. And so it's negative 5y times parentheses y plus 5. Factor, remember to use, so basically the same instructions as before. I didn't intend to pick 2 where it started with a negative, but it's okay. We can handle it. We're going to pull out a negative. Look just at the coefficients here for a second. So I've got 6, 8, and 4. They are all even numbers, so my greatest common factor is going to be a 2. R to the fourth, R squared, and R to the first. So you have to choose the smallest exponent that you see in all of the factors. S to the 3, S to the 4th, S to the 5th. I see S to the 3rd as being the smallest one. And I can only pull those variables out because they're in all 3 terms. I hope that makes sense. All right, parentheses. Negative 2 divides into negative 6 3 times. Subtract your exponents. So we have r to the 3rd and then no s's because s to the 3rd is already out here. Plus negative 2 goes into 8 4 times. I have 2 take away 1 leaves 1 r. If I took out 3 s's and I have 4 s's, again, subtract those exponents. And then if I divide negative 2 into positive 4, I'm left with a negative 2. And then r is out here, so I don't have any r's left here. And then s to the 5th, s to the 3rd, 5 minus 3 is 2. Number 4, factor completely. All right, so it looked like it did the first step of grouping. So those 2 can now be just rewritten in the back. And these 2 make its own group, so x plus 6. Factor by grouping here. This is way more common to like what my lessons were like in the homework. So between 63 and 18, I can pull out a 9. And then x to the 3rd and x squared, I can pull out x squared. And then in the back, 7x minus 2 plus, okay, there's nothing that can be pulled out of 7x and a negative 2. So we need 1 here as a placeholder. So 7x minus 2. And then just rewrite it. So those 2 go together. 9x squared plus 1. And 7x minus 2. All right, so you write that there in the A spot. Factor by grouping again. All right, so between this first two right here, I can bring x squared out front. I'm left with 5x plus 4. When I look at 25 and 20, oh, and I look at how this is a positive and this is a negative, and so I'm gonna have to bring a negative out front right here. Between 25 and 20, both are divisible by 5, so I'm left with 5x plus 4. And so x squared minus 5 becomes its own thing, and then 5x plus 4. And that's it for the first page. All right, page 2, factor. I need two numbers. They need to multiply to 7, and they need to add to 8. So I tried to vary the level of difficulty. The only thing that multiplies to 7 is 7 plus 1. And 7 plus 1 definitely adds up to 8, so that's that. Number 8, I need to multiply to a negative 21. So 21 is 1 times 21, and it is also 4 times 7. And it needs to add, oh, sorry, not 4, 3. It needs to add up to a negative 4. The only types of numbers that multiply to a negative is if I have one positive factor and one negative factor. So instead of thinking of it as addition, you're adding, but one of them has to be negative. So it needs to be a little bit of thinking like subtraction. So if this was a positive 3 and a negative 7, that would add up to negative 4 and multiply to negative 21. So there we go. Number 9, factor completely. Remember, we always talked in the lessons, or I guess I talked to you, listened, about the greatest common factor. I can pull a 3 out. In this case, all of the terms are divisible by 3. So 3 goes into 54, 6, 14. Why can't I do this in my head? 18 times. All right. Now we need to factor out 18. We need to multiply to a negative 18. And we need to add up to a negative 3. So here are all the groups that multiply to 18. One has to be positive, one has to be negative. The larger of the two numbers in the factor get this sign. That's a common expression if you've heard that one before. And so those two match because 6 is a larger factor than 3. When you write your final answer, don't forget to include this 3 so it comes straight down. And then y plus 3 and y minus 6. Recall that order doesn't really matter. You could do y minus 6, y plus 3, and that's all good. Number 10. I see that I have s's in all 3 factors, and I start with a negative. So negative s parentheses s squared minus, that's going to change that sign, minus 3s minus 40. Factors of 40 that make negative 3. And again, if you don't know, you've seen me in the lessons just listing factors so that I have an opportunity to just have a visual. If it's a negative 8 and a positive 5, that will be the proper combination. Oops, I'm always so used to writing x's. I don't love s to use. If you've ever noticed, I never use s as a possible variable. S plus 5. I did it again. Minus 8. All right, number 11. Two numbers that multiply to 6 and add up to 14. Can't do it. There's no way. There's not going to be 1,000 primes, but it probably comes up once. Number 12. factor the trinomial completely. And so I see that all three of those are divisible by -3. So we have p squared minus 2p minus 3 goes into 72 24 times. All right, that -3 comes straight down. Two factors of 24 that add up to -2 are a -6 and a +4. And you've seen me list those factors over and over again now, so I just jumped right there. All right, this really throws some students when you see two different variables. I would highly suggest just ignoring the second one temporarily and factor this, r squared minus 9r plus 20. The extra variable makes it look kind of confusing, or if you're thinking that way, you're right on. This is a unique situation because it needs to multiply to a positive, but yet add to a negative. So we're actually going to have 2, 5, and 4. We need them both to have the same sign. So they're going to be negative, negative. So we're going to have r minus 4, leave a little space, and then r minus 5, leave a little space, and then go back and throw that second variable behind your constant term. And if you don't believe me, then you can FOIL that out, and I promise you it works. And it's just a way to kind of make it look less confusing, and then just add it back at the end. All right. Looks like with 14 and 15 and probably multiple problems to come, 16, we're going to use that slip and slide method. So 7 times -6 is -40. So x squared plus 11x, 42, my bad, minus 42. Factors of 42 that add up to 11. So 2 and 21. 3 goes into it 14 times, so it's 3 and 14. So if that's a positive 14 and a -3, that will work. So x minus 3, and then x plus 14. Since I multiplied by the 7 in step 1, I need to go back and divide by the 7 here. 3/7 cannot reduce, so you slide that 7 in front of the x. 14/7 does reduce, and in fact it just makes a nice constant, and so that's how you factor it. 15, 4 times 3 is 12, so y squared plus 8y plus 12. Factor out 12, it's going to be 2 and 6 that make 8. If we multiply by 4 in step 1, we've got to divide by 4 in step 3. 2/4, you can choose to do a second kind of middle step here if you'd like. 2/4 reduces down to 1/2. And then that 2 is going to slide in front of the y. 6/4 reduces down to 3/2. So you can slide that 2 right in front of the y there. And that's your final answer. All right, last one on this page. 16 times 9 is, I think, oh, why can't I do this? Good thing I brought a calculator. 144 was going to be my guess. So x squared, you're probably like, yeah, right, but I swear. And then 144. There are a lot of factors of 144. I see 144 as a perfect square first, 12 times 12, and 12 plus 12 is 24. So if you know those perfect squares, those patterns in math really come in handy. If we multiplied by 16 in step 1, we're going to divide it right here. Of course, it's going to reduce down to the same thing. 12 over 16 reduces down to 3/4. We do not leave our answer like that. You've got to slide the 4 back. This is just a method to make it easier to factor. You could also write 4x plus 3 quantity squared, and that would be acceptable as well. All right, there's another page come and gone. Number 17. I noticed first that the order here is a little weird. I also see that I start with a negative, which is never great. So I'm going to pull that negative out, and I'm going to reorder some things. So 3x squared minus 5x, because that sign's going to change, minus 12. Now I'm going to ignore the negative out front for a little while. 3 times 12 is 36. So I'm going to see if this factors, which it does. We have a negative 9 and a positive 4. If I multiply by 3 here, I'm going to go back and divide it. I've got this to bring down, though, right there. Don't lose sight of the fact that you've started with a negative. So I've got to have my final answer include that negative. 9 divided by 3 is just a negative 3. 4/3 can't really reduce, so that 3 slips to in front of the x, or slides, or whatever you want to say. 18. All right, there's a lot of factoring when your whole chapter is just nothing but factoring. So I like to give students lots of practice, lots of test questions, because then if you mess up on one, it doesn't, like one problem doesn't affect your whole grade. I see I can pull out a negative 2 here as a GCF. So 2x squared plus 11x plus 5. So slip and slide, ignore this. Oh, I can't really erase that. Okay, we'll ignore that temporarily. Multiply through here. So x squared plus 11x plus 10 becomes x plus 10, x plus 1. And now we're going to divide by 2, divide by 2. And I'm going to rewrite that negative 2. 10 divided by 2 is x plus 5. And 1 divided by 2 is 2x plus 1. I can not only factor out a 2, but it looks like I can factor out a y. And so I'm left with y squared plus 6y plus 9. And so two things that multiply to 9 that add up to 6 are 3 and 3. So y plus 3 squared, or you can write it out twice, your choice. Finally, we get to a few that are a little bit different. These next couple follow that a squared minus b squared pattern, where it's a plus b, a minus b. So you really need to recognize those perfect squares. I see a GCF here of 2, and then it's x squared minus 4. So that becomes x plus 2 and x minus 2. If you don't recognize your perfect squares, I would just make flashcards, do whatever it takes, especially if you have a lot of classes to take before your math journey is done. Let's factor out a 7. And we get c squared minus 25. Again, I see 25 and I immediately just associate 5 times 5. So I know it follows this pattern. C plus 5, C minus 5. Next one. 36 and 121. 121 is a little tricky. That's 11 times 11. So I see those as perfect squares. 6c squared plus 11 and 6c squared minus 11. So a little bit harder on level of difficulty. If you don't know how to deal with this not being a 2, just take that exponent and divide by 2, since we're talking about squares. 23. This one uses the perfect cube formula. And so it looks like it's a cubed minus b cubed, which is going to factor out to a minus b, a squared plus ab plus b squared. And you have to ask yourself, what is being cubed? So in the case of 125, that's 5 to the 3rd power. So every time I see a in the formula, I'm going to plop in a 5. What is being cubed here? Well, 6 times 6 times 6 is 216, or 6 to the 3rd power is 216. So the b in the formula is going to be 6v. Because then if I were to cube that, then I would get v to the 3rd power there for the exponent. And then you just plop it in. So a minus b. 5 minus 6v. The next part of the formula says a squared. So I'm going to take this right here and square it. 5 times 5 is 25. Plus this piece right here says multiply a and b together. If I multiply those two together, 5 times 6 is 30. And then the last piece says, hey, whatever the b is, square it. So 6v squared would be 36v squared. And I tried to do some color coding there so you could kind of see where the numbers came from. All right, I think we're at our last page soon. And now it looks like we're at one of the last lessons where we're asked to solve. So we're gonna, step 1 is to factor. And then step 2 is what can you do with those factors? How can you get an actual answer for the solving of it? So we're gonna set each factor equal to 0 and solve. There are all sorts of patterns and shortcuts to find. For instance, here, I would add 6 to both sides. Notice that if this is a -6, the answer is a +6. Here, how would I solve this? I would add 7. And so if the factor is a -7, the answer is a +7. And those are the 2 answers. 25, perfect squares, so r plus 5, r minus 5. And so my 2 answers are -5 and +5. 26, it's not equal to 0, so I can't really jump in quite yet. Let's jump the 26a over, and that's going to change the sign. And then I don't see any common factors, so 5 times 24 is 120. So a squared minus 26a minus 120 equals 0. So what are some factors of 120 that make 26? How about 30 and 4? I was worried I wasn't going to find that very quickly. I knew that one of the numbers had to be positive, one negative. They had to be one of the factors had to be a little bit bigger to come up with 26. So a minus 30 and a plus 4. Don't forget to divide by that 5. So 30 divided by 5 is 6. And then here I'm going to slide that 5 right there, 5a plus 4. The first problem, if I set that equal to 0, you know you're just going to add 6 to the other side. So a equals 6. On this one, if I take 5a plus 4 equals 0, and I subtract 4, 5a equals negative 4, divide by 5, divide by 5. So a is negative 4/5. And there are patterns to find there as well, but I know that it's hard for some people just don't see them yet, and that's totally fine. You just gotta be wherever your journey is right now. All right. Is there more? I don't know. 27. Ooh, that's a doozy. Okay, here we go. First thing I'm going to do is FOIL. Then I'm going to subtract the 47 because I want to set it equal to 0. Then I'm going to factor it again. And then I'm going to solve it. That's my plan. And I got a whole blank page to do it. All right. So we have 7y squared plus 49y plus 9y plus 63 equals 47. Adding my like terms here, I have 7y squared plus 58y plus 63 equals 47. I had to shake it out there. My hand is cramping from all this writing. All right, so it's been a while since I've gone through a whole worksheet like this without stopping. Bring that 47 over, 7y squared plus 58y plus 63, take away 17, or take away 47. I want to say is 16. Let me check it. 63 minus 47 is 16. 7 times 16 is 112. So y squared plus 58y plus 112 equals 0. 112, let's see what I can come up with here. It's 2 times, sorry, 56. I wanted to say 58, and I knew that wasn't right. 56, well, 7 goes into 56, so 7 has to go into 112. 112 divided by 7, 7 and 16. How in the world am I going to come up with 58? Oh, I already did it. All right, sometimes it takes me a long time to find the factors. So y plus 2 and y plus 56. Since I originally multiplied by that 7, I'm going to go back and divide by that 7 to undo it. I could have gone for so long and written factors down without noticing I had it the whole time. 7y plus 2, and then 56 divided by 7 is 8. And so this will give me an answer. You can do it out the long way if you wish, negative 7/2. And this will give me an answer of negative 8. So that was a good challenge one to kind of have at the end there. And it looks like this just lists the answers. So I'm hopeful that's helpful for you as you plan to take the test sometime in the next little bit. And that you're able to just watch the ones you need and things like that. So take care, everybody. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.